Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating lady coming to us all the way from the United States. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I'm Fong. I am based in Pasadena, California. I am a mental health for musicians advocate and host the Check Your Head podcast. I am 59 years old, and my story really started out as being a music journalist for quite a long time, quite a few decades. Interviewed all kinds of people like Chester Bennington of Linkin Park and covered Paul McCartney at the Hollywood Bowl and did all kinds of interviews with notable musicians. But then, as I was going through my career, I fell into a depression, a very severe depression and anxiety. And I really didn't know what was going on because everything in my life seemed to be going well. I was working for Sirius XM radio at the time. I was producing a show and getting talent for that show. I was kind of living my dream job at the time. But all of a sudden, things changed for me. And I couldn't think clearly. I had no motivation. I basically felt like I couldn't get out of bed. Um, I lost my appetite. I just had feelings of sadness and worthlessness and grief. Along with that came anxiety, extreme worry. And I really fought through this. I went on a journey to try to find out what was wrong with me. And I finally found my solutions. And I was able to get help for my depression and anxiety and got better and found out it was actually something that had to do with a hormonal change going on in my body. But it took a lot of detective work to find that out. Um, but fortunately, I got better. And it wasn't without a lot of hard work and persistence. And about the same time that I was getting better in 2017, um, we had two important musicians, Chester Bennington of Linkin Park and Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, both lose their lives to mental health battles. They both committed suicide. And I remember thinking, gosh, here were two musicians that brought me so much joy. How can they leave their lives in so much grief? And I knew that, I understood what it was like to be in a depression and to have the fear of anxiety and how you could be in that dark place and possibly think of ending your life. So I decided to do something about it. I first started raising funds for mental health, and then I wanted to do something bigger. Um, I became a certified life coach for musicians, and then I started the Check Your Head podcast, uh, which is about what's called Check Your Head Mental Health for Musicians podcast. And it's where notable musicians and experts come and share their mental health solutions for wellness. So every episode, we have a musician like Gilby Clarke of Guns N' Roses or Fred Armisen, a drummer and comedian, come on, share their story and how they got better with their mood disorder. And then also we tie in an expert to talk about particular conditions like OCD or bipolar disorder or depression, panic attacks. And we really try to, make it welcoming for everybody. We have a website called checkyourheadpodcast.com, and we include all free and affordable resources for mental health. Over 125 different organizations and charities, telehealth and apps that can help you on your journey to find your solutions for mood disorders and for your recovery. And I really feel like I'm on my mission to help others.
Wow. It sounds to me like because you are in the environment that you're in, a lot of musicians are already under a lot of pressure, a lot of
Mm.
scrutiny. They have to perform. Everybody's got their eye on them. And I guess when you're creative, you're also your worst self critic. You don't feel that you're good enough. Sometimes things aren't working out the way that you want it to. Now, is your focus specifically on male mental health, or are you working with musicians, both male and female?
I'm working with both male and female, but it turns out in the music industry, there is a majority of men. So there are a lot of men that I talk to, a lot of men that end up sharing their stories. And oftentimes, addiction is tied to mood disorders and mental issues. So we also talk about addiction recovery. So, yeah, I have
Okay.
a lot of experience talking to men, and men are different when it comes to women, especially when it's about getting help.
Okay. So let's talk about some of those differences. You're right. A lot of men suffer in silence. I think because in most societies, men are told to suck it up, to be strong, to be tough, and looking for help might be perceived as a sign of weakness. So most men will keep these things to themselves to a point where sometimes it's too late. Like you said, the musicians that committed suicide, it's a very, very common thing. So, what is the difference, and how can we help men to be a bit more vulnerable in terms of accepting that they need the help and reaching out when they need it?
Well, I think, you're talking about society's expectations of a man. I mean, fortunately, things are changing, but there's still a lot of, um, men growing up believing that they're supposed to be the ones to fix things, the one to solve problems, not create problems. Also, the ones you know, to figure it out themselves, the one that provides the answers, the leader, the coach, the trainer. I mean, these are all things that men are brought up believing that is their duty to society. Even as small children, they're taught to man up, to show strength, and oftentimes things like having a mental health issue, it's about how they feel, it's about their emotions. Oftentimes feelings that they don't understand themselves. Sometimes depression or anxiety could bring on thoughts that scare them and don't even make sense and can cause them to act in behaviors that are confusing. And so, because they're supposed to be the fixers and not show emotion uh, or signs of weakness, they tend to not talk about things because they're afraid of the shame or the embarrassment they're going to feel. It's especially hard for men to talk with other men about these things because they don't know how that person is going to react to what they're saying. I mean, there could be some men that, are familiar with mental health issues and could share their experience, but there are others that might ridicule them, that might say, "You know what? Just, man up," or you know, uh stop being like a girl, stop uh acting this way or feeling this way. I don't want to hear about this. I mean, there's a lot of ways that men can react that basically make them feel like, let's not talk about this. This is
Mhm.
uncomfortable for me and it should be uncomfortable for you. And so a lot of denial happens with men,
Mm.
denying that there's a problem. And it just gets, deeper and worse. The more you try to hide your emotions and your feelings, the more things can get dysfunctional, really.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So, throughout your experience with working with musicians and being an advocate for mental health for musicians, what have you found to be the progress up to this point from when you started?
you mean the progress of the podcast?
Yes.
The progress of the podcast, it started out with musicians, you know, It started out really talking with publicists that I'd worked with for a long time, trying to get them to have musicians come on to talk, to share their stories, and oftentimes that can be difficult. But, we found people like Sir Bob Cornelius Rifo of the Bloody Beetroots, who used to play with Avicii, an EDM or electronic dance music DJ who ended up taking his life at a very young age. And they used to share the stage together. And he decided, I'm going to speak out on mental health because it's an issue in our industry. And so he was one of the first people that came on the podcast. And at the time, I was trying to figure out exactly, I guess, the structure of the show and what we were doing. And fortunately, we've got quite a few really great artists that wanted to speak out, like Gilby Clarke of Guns N' Roses, Fred Armisen of Portlandia, Saturday Night Live, and also a drummer for a punk band called Trenchmouth back in the day. But they all came to speak, and I found that at first, I was getting friends from the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance that was part of a support group that I had attended when I had depression, to come and speak and be experts and speak on different things like bipolar disorder or, obsessive compulsive disorder. But then I started to find more bigger experts and tie in the right expert to the right story. Like, for instance, we just had Sal Rodriguez of the band War come on and speak about his addiction recovery that was tied to his mental health issues. And then we got his mentor in the 12 steps called Jeff Duke, and he started a 12-step recovery program called Christ-Powered Recovery that's welcome to all different religious faiths, and speak on why this longstanding program has worked for Sal and also worked for other musicians and other people that decide to do this program. So the podcast really has evolved, and hopefully it's evolved to where it makes better sense and it's got more focus on what we're trying to do, which is really trying to encourage people to get help, to inspire hope and inspiration, and also to provide solutions on our website at checkyourheadpodcast.com.
Now, what can family, friends, people who are close to somebody who's suffering do or say to help the other person? Like you said, these are very, very difficult conversations to have, and we should really be making them easy. Do you have any tips,
Mhm.
ideas in case somebody is listening, they're aware that they have a partner or a spouse or a friend who needs help, doesn't know how to reach out? What tips, ideas can you give on that level?
Well, sometimes we think that people are going to come to us and, say that there's something wrong. But oftentimes there's more physical signals or energy signals that you can sense from a person who may not be acting like they normally act. And that's really the first thing that most people notice. Is this person not socializing as much? Are they not on social media as much? Are they keeping more to themselves? Are they having difficulty socializing? Or do they look like they're down? Or do they feel like is there sadness about them that you notice without them even saying anything? Are they, are their eating habits changing? Are they, do they kind of have a negative look on life, where maybe at one time or most of the time they've been positive and optimistic? These are all changes in behavior that we need to look out for, the signs and signals of somebody having a mood disorder. um, and if somebody is approaching you, actually comes to you and says, I'm not feeling well, I'm depressed, or I feel like I'm worried all the time and I can't relax, the first thing to do really is to listen and to say, tell me more. What's going on with you? And even if you have never had experience with a mood disorder, you just by listening, showing care and compassion, and staying with that person, and saying, how can I help you, or suggesting different ways to get help, are all really helpful. And just that feeling of compassion, maybe even sharing your story of a time where you were depressed or anxious, can really help the other person feel like they're not alone, and also know that there are solutions and ways to recover from where they're at.
I love that. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the power of stories. Podcasters are out there sharing stories, bringing light to people's homes, when you're driving in the car. I want to touch a little bit about the power of stories, the stories that you share, and why it's important to share our stories. The Her Story movement is trying to get more people to step up to the plate. Come and share your story at our next online summit. This is how you can register. So go onto our website, register to speak. We are looking for 1,000 speakers for the next 6 months. Be a part of this amazing movement. Marie, let's go back to you and your story. Why are stories so powerful, do you think? Why is it important for us to share our stories with other people?
Well, I think it's important because they're true stories. I mean, the truth often is stranger than fiction, and the more vulnerable and honest we can become with our stories, the more it can connect with others. And oftentimes, when we are struggling with something, when we have a life challenge, when we're grieving, when we have a change in life, maybe we lost a job, we often feel alone. And we're often scared and confused. There's so many different feelings there. But when we share our stories, we find that we're not so alone, that oftentimes people can connect with the things that we share. And the more honest we are, the more people feel like, oh, wow, that person actually is going through what I'm going through, or that person is going through something that I thought that I could never get out of, but they made it. They figured out a way to be successful, or to get well, or to be happy. Um, you know, Stories really connect other people to one another. Um, and with that connection, we can inspire, we can provide hope, we can make somebody laugh. And that connection is so important to help one another and to connect with one another. The other thing is that stories can really, you know, stories can be really different and strange. And sometimes we feel really weird living our lives because we feel odd, we feel out of place, we feel like outcasts. And the thing about true stories is that sometimes there are a lot of weird, strange things that happen in our lives. And it makes us feel a little bit more normal, because I think at times we all feel a little strange
That
and
is
out of
so
place.
true. That is so true. And I think also stories are doors into other people's worlds. And a story can end up being the light at the end of somebody else's dark tunnel. when somebody feels that they're alone, like you're saying, you don't feel like you're alone when you hear people sharing stories. And it's really important for us to do that. Now, on your podcast, you have a motto. What is the motto of your show, and why did
The motto of my show is be brave, ask for help, and be persistent in finding the mental help that you need. And, you know, to speak openly and honestly about what's going on with you um, is really being brave. Sharing your story, your honest story, is really being brave. Um, oftentimes those stories of being brave can carry some shame or embarrassment or, uh, just feeling anxious about being honest and truthful. Uh, the thing about being But those are the things, of course, that connect, with other people. So, first is to be brave, next is to be persistent. Oftentimes with mental health issues, there's a lot of trial and error that goes on. Oftentimes we feel like nothing's gonna work. We feel like, we're too tired to even try anything, or that every time we try something and it doesn't work for us, that sometimes we feel like we don't want to do it anymore, but we got to keep going. We got to be persistent because there is a solution out there. We've just got to dig through and find it. And oftentimes it can happen a lot sooner than you might think. And there are also a lot of people that can help support you. Going through online support groups and connecting with other people that are in similar situations can give you so much insight. They can refer you on what worked for them. So I really am a big believer in support groups, and you know,
I love
it's
that. At least
yeah,
people know that they're not alone. You're not alone. There is help out there. So
yes,
I'm going to end our interview with two weird and interesting questions.
okay,
Let's imagine that time is an illusion. Your past, your present exist in the same timeline. And I could take you back to the younger you, that young woman who was struggling with her mental health, unsure of what to do, where to go. Your hormones were going crazy. If you could go back and give that young woman three pieces of advice, what would you say to her?
oh gosh, I think the first thing I would say is, you know, ask for help. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Asking for help means talking with somebody else about your problem and saying that I can't do it by myself. Um, if I had talked to more people, if I had been more open to friends and family and and asking professionals, therapists, and people in my support group for help, I think I would have gotten well a lot better instead of trying to figure it out myself for the amount of time that I did. Um, you know, I realized that that amount of time, some people can actually lose their life in that amount of time. So uh, I would have asked for help a lot earlier. Um, I think the next thing is that accepting help is also really difficult because if you're a mother, if you're somebody who is a leader or somebody who has been used to fixing things or solving problems, to accept help, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes, uh, you know, you feel like I can do this by myself. And to accept help is really important. And then also to accept uh, what you're going through. I mean, oftentimes to say, I have depression, I have anxiety, that's a lot for some people to really accept. But once you accept it, you can then progress to get better. And I accept that for myself, and I feel good about it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So now let me take you into your future. You're obviously touching many, many, many lives with what you're doing with your work. And it's really important, especially now with COVID. People are under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. If you could teleport into the future and meet the 100-year-old you when you're sitting on your rocking chair with your grandchildren, your dogs, your cats, whatever it is, and you could have a conversation with that wise woman who changed and touched so many people's lives with this podcast, what would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
I would say, you know, thank you for um, pursuing your dream, for living a life where you can contribute and participate in helping others through your own experience, and by persisting so that more people can be helped. Also, for really being dedicated to provide solutions for others. Um, you've done something that you created really all in your head. You put it together and you made it happen. You took action at a time where a lot of people might be wrapping up their lives. You were just beginning on another career journey that you really didn't look at it as a career. You looked at it as just wanting to help and just wanting to possibly improve people's lives and possibly even save someone's life. So, thank you so much for doing that. You rock.
I love that. Absolutely wonderful having you on our show today. Thank you so much for your nuggets of wisdom. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. Check out this amazing podcast. We have the website address there, checkyourheadpodcast.com. And I'm pretty sure whatever's being shared there doesn't just apply to musicians, it applies to all of us. So
It
thank you,
certainly
thank you,
does.
thank you for your work. So goodbye, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. Please go onto our website, register to speak at our next online summit. Do not go to your grave with your story. Somebody's waiting to be inspired by hearing what you have done with your life. Bye for now. Thank you.